The wind above Javari Ridge howled like a wounded god. Red dust spiraled through the sky in choking waves, whipping against steel towers and rattling across the aging solar arrays of Outpost V-17, a half-forgotten mining site on the edge of Empire space. Corbin Hale, shift foreman and chief of Making Things Not Explode, sipped thick black coffee from a dented thermos and stared out across the ridge through a grime-smeared visor. The sensor grid had been twitchy all morning. Glitches, false alarms, something moving high above the storm line. He squinted at the flickering screen mounted beside the observation hatch. Altitude, 14,000 feet. Incoming object, non-mechanical, speed dropping. He tapped the screen. Organic? The air trembled. Far above the outpost, wings too large for the thinning atmosphere beat once, twice, then faltered. Zerith was dying, not in body. Her frame was still strong, even under the weight of wind-burned scales and half-healed plasma wounds, but something deeper had begun to wither. Hope. The child curled in her claws. Cinder was too still, too light. His tiny breaths had grown shallow. His scales dulled to an ashen bronze. His eyes hadn't opened since the last feeding cycle, 2 full nights past. Zerith tightened her grip. She angled her descent toward the outpost. This one. She didn't know why. She had passed military bases, supply colonies, larger settlements, but something in her bones whispered, here. Corbin didn't panic. That was the main reason people like him got left in charge of dangerous backwater stations like V-17. You don't panic when a smelter backs up. You don't panic when a drill bores into a live methane pocket. And you don't panic when a dragon crashes into the canyon 300 meters outside the southern fence line. He stood in silence, watching as the dust cloud rose, then turned calmly, hit the intercom. Jess, bring the med pack and water rations. Heavy grade. What? Why? Something just landed, and I think it's bleeding. Zerith crouched low, wings folded, body shaking. Cinder whimpered faintly, a thread of sound, barely audible. She shifted to shelter him with her chest. Her breath rasped as she lowered her head, eyes fixed on the outpost entrance, now glowing faintly with interior lights. There would be weapons. There were always weapons. Always fear. But this was her last gamble, a last cry in a galaxy that didn't want to listen. Corbin approached alone. No armor, no weapon. Just thick work boots, a scarf over his mouth, and a battered utility vest that reeked of engine oil and dust. He walked slowly across the scorched flat, into the wind and into the shadow of a being he'd only seen in warning briefs and mythcasts. The dragon raised its head slowly. Corbin stopped and lowered himself to one knee. Not in fear, not in submission, in respect. Zerith blinked once. Her claws tensed. The human said nothing. Then he unstrapped a water pack from his vest and laid it gently on the sand. Yours, he said. He pointed. Mine, he added, stepping back. Zerith didn't move. Corbin gestured again, slower. Then he sat cross-legged on the ground and waited. Cinder stirred. Zerith immediately turned, cradling him tighter, but his eyes fluttered, weakly, a tiny, cracked breath. His jaw opened, tongue dry. Corbin reached forward slowly and opened the pack. It wasn't just water. It was hydration gel, designed for deep mine workers and atmospheric damage victims. He tore the seal and placed it on the ground between them. Zerith didn't know the word for mercy, but she felt it. She nudged the pack toward her son with a trembling claw. Cinder made a sound, not a roar, not a cry, a gulp. From the ridge, Jess stared through binoculars. Corbin, she whispered over the comm, you are out of your damned mind. Corbin's voice crackled back. Don't shoot, don't move, don't talk. But it's a mother, he said, and her kid is starving. Zerith exhaled as Cinder's breathing evened out. The gel pack drained. His tiny claws twitched. His eyes opened, just barely. And for the first time in cycles, Zerith felt something bloom through the exhaustion and pain. Relief. She turned to the human again. This time she didn't bare her teeth. She lowered her head. Inside the Imperial Central Sector, warning beacons flashed. Zavathi satellites had tracked an unauthorized biological signature landing near Outpost 517, a dragon, with a human standing beside it. Emergency protocols spun into motion because dragons were not supposed to be on human soil and humans were never supposed to earn their trust. Corbin sat quietly as Zerith curled tighter around her hatchling. "I don't know if you understand me," he said softly, "but I'll say it anyway." He reached into his pack again, pulling out a small heating cell. "You picked the right outpost." He smiled faintly, placing it beside her claw. "Let's see if we can keep that little guy alive." Far above, warships changed course, and in a command chamber carved of black obsidian and pride, an alien admiral hissed at the incoming report. "Secure the dragon, kill the human." Because what they didn't know, what they feared most, was already unfolding. A bond, forged not with chains, but with care. The sun never really rose on Javari Ridge, not properly. It crawled into view like a wounded thing, smearing pale red across the sky and giving everything a tired glow. Corbin Hale knelt beside the massive, slumbering form of Zerith and her hatchling Cinder. His knees ached from the rocky ground. The air reeked of sulfur and storm static. But he didn't move, because Cinder was breathing, and that was enough. The heating cell he'd left beneath Zerith's claw still glowed faintly, not hot enough to harm, just enough to radiate comfort. Cinder's tiny body had curled against it instinctively, his wing twitching as he let out soft, crackling breaths. His scales had shifted from dull bronze to a faint, burnished sheen. Not bright, but not death-pale either. It was progress. Zerith stirred. Corbin didn't reach for his tools, didn't stand. He simply raised his thermos and offered it up. "Morning," he said, voice calm. "Brought extra fuel packs, synthetic protein gel. We don't have dragon chow, but we got field rations high in amino bonds. Might help." Zerith's golden eye opened slowly. It fixed on him, then on the small pouch he set beside her. No threat, no growl, just consideration. She picked up the ration carefully, delicately, with 2 claws, examined it, then placed it near Cinder. Corbin smiled faintly. "We're starting to understand each other." Back at the outpost gate, Jess leaned against the rail, binoculars in hand, muttering, "This is officially the weirdest Tuesday I've ever seen." Behind her, drone techs were watching from camera feeds. One of them, a young recruit named Marlowe, whispered, "Is he really feeding it?" "Not it," Jess corrected. "Them." She didn't know why she said it, but she knew she was right. Inside the control room, a proximity alarm blared. Marlowe frowned. "We got company." Jess checked the scanner. A sleek black arrow blip crept into frame, low, silent, fast. Dropship, military grade. In orbit, the Zarvathi strike vessel Malrek prepared deployment. Commander Heska snarled as he scanned the mission brief. Target, Class 4 draconic specimen, rogue female, Zerith. Sub-target, human civilian interfering with quarantine protocol. Status, terminate human. Secure the hatchling, neutralize the adult if non-compliant. He growled. Who in the void let a mechanic feed a dragon? Corbin didn't need a scanner to feel the change in the wind. Zerith lifted her head slightly, nostrils twitching. Something coming, not part of this world. He stood, dusted his gloves off, and keyed the comm on his collar. "Jess, we're about to have visitors." "How many?" Corbin listened. The sky was too quiet. "Too many." He turned back to Zerith. "I know what they think of you," he said. "What they'll say about me." Zerith stared at him, unmoving. "I don't care." He took a slow step forward. "You didn't come here to fight. You came here to save your kid." He looked down at Cinder, who let out a soft coo. "So let's save him." The Zarvathi dropship landed hard. Dust exploded into the air. 6 armored troopers spilled out with surgical precision, pulse rifles drawn, movement crisp and lethal. Red visors swept the canyon. Commander Heska barked, "Stand down and back away from the creature." Corbin didn't move. He stood between them and the dragons, arms relaxed, jaw set. "She's not a threat. She is a Class 4 hazard. She's a mother." One trooper raised his weapon. "This is your final warning." Behind Corbin, Cinder stirred. The trooper noticed. "Subject 2 is active. Prepare for containment." A second trooper moved to flank Corbin. Zerith growled, low and ancient. Corbin didn't turn. She hasn't moved. She hasn't attacked. You're interfering with an Imperial recovery. Corbin took a slow breath. I'm protecting a family. The lead trooper fired a warning shot, a heat pulse that slammed the ground 2 feet from Corbin's boot. Zerith's roar cracked the sky. She didn't attack. She moved. A single step forward, wings flaring just enough to cast shadow over Corbin and Cinder. And that was enough. All 6 troopers raised their weapons. Cinder squeaked in fear. Corbin shouted, "Stop!" Cinder did something no one expected. He stood up, tiny, frail, shaking. But he stepped between his mother and the soldiers, and he growled, a sound like crackling coal. One of the troopers hesitated. "This is not protocol," Commander Hesker snarled. "Fire." But no one did, because in that moment they saw something they weren't trained for. A dragon protecting a human, a hatchling protecting its mother, and a man standing in front of them all. Corbin turned slowly, locking eyes with Hesker. "You gonna shoot a baby?" No response. "You gonna start a war over a family?" Still nothing. "You were sent to destroy a threat. What you found was a bond. If you fire now, you don't just break protocol. You break something bigger." Hesker's eye twitched. "Stand down!" he barked. The troopers hesitated. One slowly lowered his rifle, then another, then the third. Back on the Malrec, the Admiral watching the live feed cursed and slammed his hand against the console. But it was too late, because the moment had already been captured, by satellites, by drone feeds, by everyone. Across the inner systems, the footage spread like wildfire. A dragon standing over a human handing food to a dying hatchling, Imperial troopers lowering their weapons one by one, and a small dragon cub growling at an armored squad, backed by the calm gaze of a man with dirt under his nails and 0 tolerance for cruelty. Jess watched the feed from the tower, wiping her eyes with the back of her glove. "Damn," she whispered. "You really did it, you crazy bastard." Zerith folded her wings again, not in submission, in peace. She leaned her head toward Corbin. He rested a hand on her jaw. "Let's get your kid something to eat that isn't field gel." She let out a soft rumble. Corbin turned back to the stunned troopers. "You got med packs?" They blinked. "Then help me." And in that moment, on a forgotten ridge at the edge of Empire space, something incredible happened. An empire expected a war. Instead, it found cooperation, born from hunger, held by hope, and defended by a human who refused to be afraid. By noon the next day, the wind had calmed. The red storm clouds above Javari Ridge thinned into streaks of burnt copper, and for the first time in weeks, the sunlight actually touched the ground instead of hiding behind ash and static. Corbin stood on the edge of the south platform, arms crossed, watching a miracle unfold in slow motion. Cinder was trying to fly. Zerith sat a few meters behind him, her massive wings folded, eyes focused on her hatchling with an intensity only a mother could manage. Her tail moved in slow arcs, brushing the dust with rhythm and purpose, almost like a metronome keeping Cinder steady. Cinder flapped once, too high, then tumbled forward and landed in a soft puff of sand. He squeaked, flustered. Corbin chuckled. "That's all right, kid. I've crashed a few landers worse than that." Zerith let out a warm exhale, a low chuff that sounded dangerously close to laughter. Jess approached from behind, offering Corbin a datapad. He didn't look. "What now?" he asked flatly. She sighed. "Empire's official stance just dropped. You're under investigation for unauthorized biological interaction." Corbin raised an eyebrow. "That's their way of saying they're mad I made friends." "Pretty much." He finally took the pad. "They're deploying the magistrate's eye." Jess winced. "Yeah. Great," he muttered. "That means politics." The magistrate's eye was more than a ship. It was a diplomatic hammer, a mobile courtroom and public relations machine wrapped in gold-plated hulls and strategic silence. It never fired weapons. It didn't have to. It showed up where the Empire wanted to reclaim control through optics, and it was now headed for Outpost 517. Zerith shifted her wings. Corbin turned. "You feel it too, huh?" She didn't growl. She didn't move. But her eyes locked on his, and he felt the truth between them. She trusted him. But that trust was finite, not because she doubted him, but because she knew how empires worked. Inside the outpost's main comms room, Jess paced. "Do you know how bad this is going to look?" she hissed. Marlowe muttered. "Bad. We're about to have a dragon sitting next to a human while the Empire reads its public ruling aloud in front of 100 billion viewers." "Yeah," Jess snapped. "Bad." Corbin entered, holding a thermal blanket and a ration crate. "I don't care what they rule," he said calmly. "We keep Cinder fed." Jess rubbed her eyes. "Corb, they're not coming to argue. They're coming to put this back in a box, one way or another." "They're going to try," he said. Then he turned and left. That night, as the stars burned clean above the ridge, Corbin sat outside with Zerith and Cinder beside a small electric heater. Cinder had eaten, slept, flown 2 meters. Progress. Zerith watched Corbin quietly, her jaw resting near the heater, eyes glowing like ancient lanterns. He looked at her. "You didn't ask for any of this," he said. "Neither did I." Cinder purred softly. Corbin smiled. "They want us to play along, pretend this never happened, or worse, pretend you were grateful to be saved." He looked up at the stars. "Funny, though, you're the one who saved us." The magistrate's eye landed at dawn. It didn't roar, it descended, silent, controlled, pure intimidation cloaked in protocol. Out came the delegation, robes, metallic masks, translators humming, escorts flanking every side. At the center was Emissary Vural, a lean, silver-eyed official who looked like he'd never touched dirt in his life. He surveyed the outpost like it was a stain. Jess greeted him. "Welcome to Outpost V-17. He didn't blink. "Where is the unauthorized bond?" Jess didn't flinch. "Feeding her child." They convened on the upper platform. The delegation formed a crescent, Vural at the center, and across from them, Corbin, behind him, Zerith, calm, quiet. To the side, Cinder, curled beside a heating unit. Vural began reading. "The Empire, in accordance with its sovereign genetic code authority, hereby rules the following. The subject dragon, designated Zerith, is to be returned to quarantine for further study. The hatchling, referred to as Cinder, shall be remanded to Imperial custody. The human—" "No." The word came low, steady. Vural froze. "Excuse me?" he said. Corbin stepped forward. "You're not taking them." The entire platform stiffened. Zerith lifted her head. Vural sneered. "You would defy an Imperial ruling?" "I'd defy gravity if it meant protecting them." The emissary gestured. A silent squad of guards stepped forward. That's when Cinder, tiny, young, fragile, stepped in front of his mother again. And this time, he flared his wings. A gust of heat pulsed out. The guards hesitated. Corbin didn't shout. He knelt beside the hatchling. "Easy," he said. "We don't burn idiots unless we have to." Cinder blinked up at him, then snorted steam. Zerith rose fully, towering. But she didn't threaten. She stood. And in that moment, Vural realized something horrifying. She was waiting for him to act. Not Corbin, not the soldiers. Him, the diplomat. Because if he gave the order, she would no longer be a protector. She would become a storm. The cameras were live. The galaxy was watching. And if this ended in fire, it would be his fault. So Vural did what terrified men in expensive robes always did. He pivoted. "This bond is not sanctioned," he said, "but it is informative." He forced a smile. "The Empire, in its wisdom, will observe this event further before acting." Corbin blinked. "You mean you're backing off?" "We are choosing diplomacy." The delegation turned and left. The magistrate's eye rose into the sky, and the moment it cleared orbit, Corbin collapsed into a sitting position and let out a deep breath. Holy hell! Zerith stepped beside him, lowered her head, and for the first time gently pressed her snout against his shoulder. Not just thanks, not just trust. Something deeper, something earned. In the days that followed, messages poured in. From other colonies, from scientists, from dragonkin survivors in exile. People who once saw dragons as weapons, now saw them as living stories. And the human who stood beside one? They started calling him something new, not foreman, not mechanic, but the Dragon Keeper. The phrase, the Dragon Keeper, spread like wildfire through the outer colonies. It started as a joke on a fringe comm board. Someone uploaded footage of Corbin placing a blanket over Cinder while Zerith watched. But when the footage hit EarthNet, it went supernova. Within 48 hours, it had been clipped, re-rendered, narrated in 37 languages, and quoted in debate chambers from the Kastari wastes to the Corinthian trade ring. A human kneeling to comfort a dragon, a hatchling defending that human from soldiers, a mother dragon restraining herself for the sake of peace, and through it all, Corbin, calm, defiant, kind. Inside the Zerith High Command, panic replaced silence. Admirals barked about containment, ministers argued about optics. One governor called for immediate orbital cleansing of Outpost V-17, but others, quiet voices in important corners, started asking different questions. If a dragon chooses peace, what does that say about us? Back on the ridge, Cinder was flying. Not high, not fast, but flying. Zerith stood nearby like a proud fortress, tail twitching as her son flapped from one broken satellite dish to another, each leap more confident than the last. Corbin leaned on the old comm tower, arms crossed, coffee in hand, watching with a half grin. Jess stood beside him. "You know you've become a political movement, right?" "I didn't sign up for that." "Yeah, well, too late. People are calling you the reason the dragons are finally being seen." Corbin sipped. "I'm not the reason. He is." He pointed to Cinder, wobbling through a landing. "And she is." Zerith met his gaze across the wind. That's when the shot rang out, not from the crowd, not from the air, from a cloaked cliff drone, camouflaged into the rock, barely detectable. The bolt was aimed not at Cinder, but at Corbin. Zerith moved before the beam reached him. A split-second flash, her body coiled between Corbin and the sniper's line of fire. The bolt struck her side, sizzling against hardened scale. She didn't scream. She charged. One leap, one roar. The drone didn't survive long enough to record it. The cliff exploded under the force of a focused plasma burst from her chest. She returned to Corbin, her shoulder smoldering. Blood hissed from the impact site. Corbin stood frozen. "You okay?" Jess shouted, running toward him. He didn't answer. He stepped forward and laid a hand on Zerith's scorched side. She exhaled once, softly. Her wing drooped. Cinder landed beside them, growling furiously. Corbin looked up at Jess. "We have a problem." 3 hours later, it was confirmed. The drone wasn't rogue. It was military issue. Zerith tech, deep covert ops, signed off by no one. Officially, but unofficially, it was a hit job. That night, Corbin sat in the command center with the lights off. Zerith lay outside the gates, her wing bandaged, pain evident, but ignored. Cinder curled beside her, head resting on her forearm. Jess entered quietly, datapad in hand. "They're offering you asylum," she said. "EarthGov, 3 other federations too." He didn't respond. "They'll protect you. You can go somewhere safe. Live without this." She gestured toward the window. Corbin looked through the glass, at the 2 dragons, at the quiet stillness of the ridge, at the stars above them. "I'm already where I'm supposed to be." Messages poured in. A delegation from Thalos Prime sent a request for diplomatic talks with Zerith. A university on New Castor offered to fund an interspecies research pact, but the one that mattered came directly from Zerith Prime, Queen Ceriva herself. A direct call, no script, no mask, just her face, tired, impossibly regal, and clearly struggling to accept the shape of what was happening. "You've ignited something," Mr. Hale Corbin folded his arms. "I didn't ignite anything. I helped a mother feed her kid. And now half the galaxy thinks dragons can be diplomats." He stared at her. "Maybe they can." She looked away for a moment. "Zerith has been granted provisional ambassador status. Limited, monitored, symbolic. Not a cage." Her eyes narrowed. "I'm not stupid enough to cage a creature that just saved your life on a global live stream." Corbin smirked. "Progress," she continued. "You are being offered a position, not military, not ceremonial, a liaison. To what? To the thing we used to fear, the thing you call a friend." She paused. "To the future." Outside, Cinder lifted into the night sky, wind curling around his growing wings. Zerith watched him go, and Corbin stood beside her. You ready for what comes next? He asked. She turned to him, and without a sound, lowered her massive head until it touched his shoulder. That was her answer. The Zarvathi convocation chamber had never seen a dragon before, certainly not one who arrived by invitation. The circular chamber was vast, lined with curved glass walls, luminescent stone pillars, and balconies where delegates from over 40 species now gathered. Some seated in hover thrones, others perched, some encased in floating mineral tanks. But all watched one thing: the massive landing platform at the center where Zerith, flanked by her now strong hatchling Cinder, stepped forward with quiet dignity. And behind them, walking in a simple brown coat and scuffed boots, Corbin Hale, the man who gave a starving dragon family more than food. He gave them a voice. Queen Sariva herself presided, her expression unreadable, her hands clasped tightly. The whispers had already begun days before, that this event would either signal peace or spark panic, that dragons were no longer beasts, but diplomats, that humans were dangerous not because of their weapons, but because of their compassion. Corbin stopped at the central podium. He didn't look at the lights, or the cameras, or the alien nobles fidgeting in their chairs. He turned to Cinder, who now stood proudly beside his mother, wings twice as large as when he first arrived. Then he spoke. When I met Zerith, she didn't growl, she didn't roar, she didn't burn the sky. He looked around the room. She begged, quietly, with her eyes, for help. Some shifted in discomfort, others listened intently. She didn't ask for power, she asked for mercy, and she didn't get it from the Empire, she didn't get it from a fleet, she got it from a dirty mechanic who happened to have spare rations. A low ripple through the chamber. Corbin stepped aside. But I'm not the voice that matters here. He turned to Zerith. She is. A translator orb floated beside her. Corbin had insisted it be neutral, not imperial made, one built from human code, capable of interpreting tone, breath, and intention. The orb lit up as Zerith stepped forward. We do not wish to rule. The voice was deep, calm, carried across the dome like a river beneath stone. We do not wish to burn. We were made to fight, then cast aside. She paused. Cinder stepped forward beside her, wings half raised. But this human fed my child, not because he was ordered to, because he saw us. Silence. Zerith turned her head slowly. So now we see you, and we ask, will you see us back? No one spoke. Then, slowly, Queen Sariva stood. Her eyes met Zerith's. A beat, then another, and then, without flourish, without cue, she bowed, low, deliberate, and across the balconies, one by one, representatives began to follow, even those who once called dragons monsters, even those who feared fire and wing and claw. They bowed, not to a queen, not to a weapon, but to a mother, to a child, to hope. Outside the convocation tower, the crowd was massive. Drones hovered, children climbed shoulders, millions watched the broadcast, and in the center, the open platform waited. Zerith and Corbin stepped onto it together. He gave her one look. You ready? She nudged him gently with her snout. Cinder stepped up beside them. Corbin raised a hand to the crowd, then stepped back. Your turn, kid. Cinder looked out at the galaxy watching. He spread his wings. He didn't roar in anger. He didn't screech in fear. He let out a clear, strong call, a new sound, a declaration, not of war, but of existence. The crowd erupted. Cheers, shouts, applause, alien vibrations of respect echoed across species, and up above, in the atmosphere beyond the sound barrier, a fleet of ships hovered, but none fired, none dared, because what they had feared was no longer a monster, it was a symbol. Later that night, in a quiet garden above the city, Corbin sat on a stone bench. Zerith curled nearby, finally asleep. Cinder snored beside her, wings twitching in dreams. Jess approached. You did it. Corbin smiled. No. He nodded toward the two dragons. They did. Jess chuckled. Still, you've got fan clubs, books coming. Some nut wants to build a statue of you holding a wrench and standing on a dragon's tail. Corbin laughed. Please don't let them. She sat beside him. So what now? Peace ambassador? Full-time dragon whisperer? He looked at the stars. I just want to keep feeding them. Keep them safe. Help others understand what they are. Jess nodded. And what are they? He took a long breath, then smiled. Just a family that never gave up.